Yeah. I don't remember. I was here then. I was here. Was that the blessing of the... No. 'Cause I know, oh no, there was a, oh no. There were just a few of us here. And yeah, no, I was here that day. I wasn't speaking. All right, so we're gonna get this. All right. We begin this morning with the lighting of our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. And as I light it this morning, I speak words that were collected by a man named Alexander Carmichael in the Scottish Highlands over 125 years ago. They are assembled from traditional prayers said by people in humble abodes as they tended the hearth fire. And so from the Carmina Gadelica, as I light our chalice candle, I speak these words. I will kindle the fire this morning without malice, without jealousy, without envy, without fear, without terror of anyone under the sun. A flame of love to my neighbor, to my foe, to my friend, to the brave, to the knave. I will raise the fire to save, to shield, to surround. The hearth, the house, the household. Blessed be the house, blessed be the fire, blessed be the people all. Our call to worship are words of Douglas Taylor, entitled, We Carry the Flame. Across the generations, we have carried the flame. We fought the injustice, sang the songs, spoke for truth, and built something lasting. We join in the line, and we carry the flame forward. Across the generations, we are tending the flame. Hand in hand, together, we share in the work of fighting injustice, singing the songs, speaking the truth. And we are here to build something lasting. We join in the line, and we carry the flame forward. Across the generations, we have been nourished by this flame. We are singing new songs, breaking old barriers, sharing in the work. And as we find our own space in what has been, we are here to make space for the next person as well. We join in the line and we carry the flame forward. Across the generations, this flame comes to us. We are here for the songs, for the justice, for the community sharing the work. We are here now, too, to build something new and lasting. We are ready for a new day together. We join in the line and we carry the flame forward. With that in mind, let us worship together. I invite you now to rise as you're willing and able, in body or in spirit, and join in our opening hymn. It's number 318 in the gray hymnal, We Would Be One.
To that high call. searching for that meaning which bends our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
We acknowledge that our church is built on land forcibly taken from those who have called it home for thousands of years, inhabitants of the villages of Tatonga and Atat Sangva that held the cultures and languages for the Tongva, Tatavian, and Chumash people. This land remains part of their enduring identity and heritage. We recognize that these tribes are fortunately still here, and we are committed to honoring their stories, culture, and community. Our existence as a spiritual community can never be fully understood without appreciating the depth of the loss of their land in generations past and the enduring hopes for the renewed vitality of these cultures in years to come. Now, if you would join me in saying our covenant, first in English, then Spanish. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, thus do we covenant. La doctrina de esta iglesia es el amor. La búsqueda de la verdad es su sacramento y el servicio es su oración. Vivir juntos en paz, buscar el conocimiento en libertad, servir a la humanidad en comunión. Este es nuestro pacto. Good morning. I'm Tracy Watson. My pronouns are she and her, and it is my honor to be your worship associate for today's service. A reminder, please silence your cell phones and wear your masks. This is Emerson Unitarian Universalist Church, named for the great American transcendentalist writer and Unitarian minister, Ralph Waldo Emerson. We are an active liberal religious community that has been a part of the West Valley for over 65 years. I welcome you to this community of hope and love, of peace and justice, of wholeness and healing. It is wonderful to be with you all for worship this morning in this sanctuary of spiritual freedom where we celebrate and encourage the diversity of heritage, culture, beliefs, and experience, shaping our individual visions of truth. In Unitarian Universalism, you can bring your whole self, your full identity, your questioning mind, your expansive heart. Together, we create a force more powerful than one person or one belief system. As Unitarian Universalists, we do not have to check our personal background and beliefs at the door. We join together on a journey that honors everywhere we've been before. Today's service deals with fire, which can be the smallest candle flame or a blazing bonfire. We benefit in many ways from this powerful sacred element. Fire brought humans the gift of warmth and light. A cleansing fire can lead to purification and renewal. Trees like giant sequoias rely on fire on the forest floor to cause their cones to dry out, open, and release their seeds. And fire's intensity can inspire us emotionally. Love is friendship on fire, according to Ann Landers. The Buddha said, everything is on fire, in recognition of the constant change and impermanence of the world. And for activists, the fire of commitment burns as long as hope for a better world endures. I look forward to hearing our lay leader, Todd Covert, share his own insights. If you're joining us in worship for the first time, we gladly welcome you to our service and invite you to fill out your information in the online guest book document in the chat, or the guest book in the foyer for those of you here in the sanctuary, so you may be informed about future services and other opportunities for gathering with Emerson community during the week. We have a website that is regularly updated with church information. If you would like to have a joy or sorrow read aloud later in the service during our embracing meditation, please submit it by clicking on the link, which is also posted in the chat. After the service, we will have refreshments available in the pavilion, so those of you here in the sanctuary are invited to join us. Everyone online is invited to join us in our virtual coffee hour on Zoom and after the service and conversation. Now, in the spirit of fellowship, let's take time to greet our neighbors. You may use this time to write an entry in the book of life behind the piano.
Thanks, I'm sorry.
I have.
Oh, that's great.
It's up there. It might be, I don't know if it's easier to read than.
Yeah.
Oh, you've got it.
Yeah.
Finally, I was like,
It was in.
okay, so I'm just going to go to the doctor, and they said, yeah, you need antibiotics. So it was really fast, getting over it. So.
Yeah, sometimes when you get just the right antibiotic, it's real fast. Yeah. God, it's amazing we put those things in our body, and they somehow or another fight them. Actually, I have no idea how that works. I mean, like.
The only thing is that's remaining is that my ears are still clogged.
I see. Oh.
And so I can't mix anything in the studio or anything like that because I can't enough. I'm sure I would just reduce the highs, because I can't.
Yeah.
Honestly, the high is the muffler.
Right. Yeah.
So I just trying to delay this one project because I have to mix it.
Well, I've had, as I've gotten older the last 10 years, I've noticed my high frequencies are disappearing. Because when you get older, that's the first thing that goes. And so I've been thinking of getting an ear, some sort of assistance to maybe bring those back a little bit. I don't know how it would work. I mean, after all, I'll never be able to hear them, even if there's something in my ear. So they must have some way of accenting them or something.
Yeah, I know that I've lost some hearing. So I'm like, well, maybe I can't be careful. So far my mixes seem okay still.
Yeah.
But I know that there's probably going to be some time where that's not going to happen. Because I know that I've lost hearing. Too much life stuff where I'm sitting next to the crash center.
It happened just when I discovered post-production sound. Wow, I was just totally enthralled with the job. It's a beautiful job. I mean, it's so creative.
Yeah, that's true.
You feel like you're the cameraman on the set, but you're after the set. You get to create the entire, realm. But finally, the directors was hearing things I didn't hear and stuff like that. And I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, well, welcome back.
Thanks.
This morning we have a treat. Our resident poet, Eric Schmidt, has written a poem about Brigid.
Good morning. I wrote this poem a while back for our pagan group that meets on the first Tuesday of the month on Zoom too. and it's Brigit's poem, which is on February 1st, our holiday. I build a sacred pyre to honor the goddess of water and fire. And when the grass emerged and the ewe's milk came, all thanks to the goddess of water and flame. And then in Brigid's rivers, creeks, and wells, we wash and bathe to purify and sanctify the holiness of life. And Brigid's well is in Kildare, Ireland, outside of Dublin. Okay, thank you.
As a matter of fact, the candle in the chalice was lit from a candle, lit from a candle, lit from a candle, lit from the perpetual flame of Brigid in Kildare back in 2003 when I was there. So good morning again. My name is Todd Covert. For those of you I don't know, you can refer to me by he or him. And it is my absolute privilege to be here once again in the pulpit at Emerson. As that implies, this is not my first time speaking here, but I have to confess that this is a first time for me. I'm doing something I've never done. I'm repeating a sermon, but not one that I've delivered at Emerson. I delivered this sermon that you'll be hearing a bit later back in 2010 at what was then Conejo Valley UU. I was invited to speak there, and so I only provided essentially the sermon. I didn't plan the whole service. The worship associate there did. So today is an opportunity for me to revisit a seasonally appropriate and occasion appropriate sermon and to build out the service around it. So it is really a privilege to be able to do that and to share various material around this occasion, which I'll talk a bit more about later, and the goddess and Saint Brigid. The other thing that I did share at Conejo Valley, besides the sermon, was a story for all ages. It's brief. I'm going to share it again here this morning. We don't have any young people here in the sanctuary, but we're all young at heart, and perhaps there are children on Zoom. So the story is the legend of Saint Brigid, or Brigid's cloak. And it's a tale about a strong woman who stands up to authority. And there's a lot of those stories that go back a long time, many generations. A couple that I've always liked are, for example, in ancient Greece, the goddess Demeter, whose daughter, Persephone, the goddess of the springtime, was taken into the underworld, was captured to be the wife of the king of the underworld, Hades. And Demeter, who was the goddess of the earth and the goddess of agriculture and of all growing things, was so outraged that her daughter had been taken from her and taken into the dark, into the underworld, that she stopped all the growing of things, all the growing of the plants, the grain, the fruit. And so there was nothing to eat. And despite the fact that all the authority figures, Zeus, the king of the gods, Hades, who had Persephone and his kingdom in the underworld, tried to be resolute and tried to stamp their feet and assert their authority, in the end, the goddess had her way. And she got her daughter to come back to the surface for at least half the year. Another story I've always liked from the Hebrew Bible, the story of Esther, who became the queen of Persia. Now, Esther was born of a Jewish family, and there were many Jews living in Persia at that time in history. And she became the queen married to the king Xerxes. Now, Xerxes had an evil, duplicitous advisor, Haman. Boo, Haman. Yeah. Listen, the best thing about Haman, if you like Purim, the holiday, is the Hamantaschen, the cookies. But I digress. Haman thought the Jews were a threat to that society, and so he convinced the king to kill the Jews. But Esther's foster father, Mordecai, who was a Jewish man, convinced her that she could stand up to the king and she could convince the king to do what was right. Esther was concerned. Esther was worried. Esther thought she could not do that the king was too powerful, that he wouldn't listen. And yet, Esther persuaded him to spare her people. Lots of these stories. I'm going to share the one about Brigid in a second, but one that reminds me of the story I'm about to share comes from the Brothers Grimm. It's a fairy tale they collected. It goes by the title of The Women of Weinsberg in the Grimm collection, but there are other versions of it. It goes like this. In Germany of old, several hundred years ago, when King Conrad defeated a neighboring duke, he placed the duke's realm, Weinsberg, under siege. He surrounded the castle. The wives of that besieged castle, of the men of the castle, negotiated a surrender. It allowed them the right to leave the castle with whatever they, the wives of the men who were under siege, could carry. The king granted them that much. Leaving everything else aside, all of their belongings, each woman took her own husband on her shoulders and carried her husband out of the castle. When the king's people saw what was happening, many of them said that was not what had been meant and tried to stop it, but the king had to laugh. He accepted that he had been outwitted. A king, he said, should always stand by his word. Which brings us to the story of St. Brigid's cloak from Ireland. This is how the story is told by the sisters of St. Brigid, who have an abbey in Kildare that Eric mentioned, where they tend a perpetual flame and have custody of Brigid's sacred well. And as they put it, the legend of Brigid's cloak is often told. It's the story about about the manner in which she came to acquire the land to build her monastery at Kildare. It is often regarded as the first of the saint's miracles. Brigid approached the king of Leinster and requested land on which to build her monastery. The place she selected in Kildare was ideal. It was near a lake where water was available, in a forest where there was firewood, and near a fertile plain on which to grow crops. The king refused her request. Brigid was not put off by his refusal. Rather, she and the sisters of her order prayed that the king's heart would soften. She made her request again, but this time she added, "Just give me as much land as my cloak will cover." Looking at her small cloak, the king laughed and granted the request. However, Brigid had instructed her 4 helpers each to take a corner of the cloak and stretch it out in opposite directions, north, south, east, and west. As they did this, the cloak began to grow and spread to cover many acres of land. She now had the land she needed to build her monastery. The king and his entire household were dismayed and amazed. They realized this woman was truly blessed, that she was truly a saint. The king became a patron of the monastery and assisted Brigid with money, food, and gifts. He converted from his pagan following to Christianity, and it was on this land in Kildare that the monastery was built in the year 470. Strong women using their strength to assert their authority and get what is needed for the people, for the land, for everyone. I invite you now to join in our UU affirmation for youth with the hand signals. I know we don't have the order of service, but hopefully you all know it. We are Unitarian Universalists, a people of open minds, loving hearts, and welcoming hands. Thank you.
As part of our commitment to serve our community, we share half our offering with local organizations whose work furthers our mission. This month, that organization is Haven Hills. Since 1977, Haven Hills has lifted up survivors of domestic violence to transform their lives. They offer shelter, crisis intervention, counseling, advocacy, and activities supporting increased economic opportunity for over 2,500 women and men each year. In doing so, they help survivors of domestic violence find the strength within themselves to break the cycle of abuse and build a new, productive, and joyful life for themselves and their children. The offering will now be gratefully received.
I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
Our next hymn is number 1070 in the Teal hymnal. It's Mother, I Feel You. I invite you now to rise in body and spirit, or spirit, as you are willing and able, and join in singing Mother, I Feel You. Kevin's going to lead us in this.
Mother, I feel you under my feet. Mother, I hear your heartbeat. Hey-ya, 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 ho. Hey-ya, 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 ho. Hey-ya, 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 song. Hey-ya, 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 ho. Mother, I hear you in the river song. The eternal waters flowing on and on. Hey-ya, 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 yeah, hey-ya, hey-ya, ho. Hey-ya, 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 ho. Hey-ya, 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 yeah, hey-ya, hey-ya, ho. Hey-ya, 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 ho. Father, I see you when the eagle flies. Light of the Spirit gonna take us higher. Hey-ya, 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 yeah, hey-ya, hey-ya, ho. Hey-ya, 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 ho. Hey-ya, 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 yeah, hey-ya, hey-ya, ho. Hey-ya, 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 ho.
This reading is by Mark Carlin, and it's called Tending Fire. In any story telling about the nature of fire, it must first be said that speaking about fire means speaking of a great relative. The little bit I know comes first and foremost from an older way of seeing and being in relations with fire. The stories that follow live in me during all my fire tendings, whether in the home during the long wood-burning season here in the North Country, where the resetting of logs and kindling and birch bark is a required morning ritual, or in those ceremonial outdoor fires used for sacred intents. Out in the rolling hills and big skies of southern South Dakota, past western Minnesota's fertile, dark farmland held in the bowels of the Great Red River Basin, past the old quarries of red pipe stone where the ancient peoples still come to gather the solidified blood of their ancestors to use for prayer, over the mighty Missouri River and out toward the wind and the prairie grasses, out in the small reservation community, there are people keeping their annual ceremonial sun dance tradition alive. I met an old man there who tended the fire. He shared with me stories of his younger days when he worked on a road crew, turning the wagon trail into a road through his territory. While most of the attention was focused on the events at the dance ground, this man was always in the back, always on the side at those sacred ceremonial grounds. Younger men and women came to assist and learn from him through the days and nights of the 4-day dance, without holding court for teaching, but simply by serving the fire and the stones and the people. This man shared his wisdom. He had been doing this for a long, long time. Building a fire requires a larger base wood, mid-sized branches or split wood, birch bark, pine needles or dry leaves, and finally, very small kindling or twigs. People often place paper or flammable things on the earth, top that with a few pieces of wood, light a match to it, immediately add on some larger pieces of wood, and then crouch around, blowing like heck and hyperventilating. Instead, build a fire like assembling pieces of its body with respect to its life. Set a foundation first, like bones that will hold the body together. Inside, place a wooden heart, liver, gallbladder, intestines, and lungs. Atop, place skins of bark, needles, cones, and then atop that, add hair of dry and fine twigs. All the while, be mindful of the balance between space and matter. Like a newborn, for fire to birth into life requires room to grow, to emerge. Fire wants to breathe. Allow enough space and room for its body to spread and not suffocate. Ask permission, especially when making an outdoor fire. Ask for help from the winds that may breathe gently into her, into him, and ask that no harm come, and promise that in return, this fire will be tended well. In Bedford, Indiana, one time I was attending a large men's council where we concerned ourselves with ceremonial aspects within our organization. It was a 3-day event, and it was customary that a central fire be started and tended all the while. Because it was a multi-generational, and we all were learning from each other, the responsibilities of tending the fire were handed to several young men, energetic and strong by nature. During our time, the fire ebbed and flowed as it will, sometimes becoming quite smoky and stubborn. The tenders, not wanting to fail in their obligations, felt they had to work the fire intensively at times. In the morning of the final day, a senior traditional man who had traveled quite far spoke up. He said, "I've been watching this sacred fire being tended, and I thank you for doing this work for our gathering. But I must tell you, it hurts my heart to see how you treat old grandmother. You need to be more gentle with her, for she has been around for a long, long time. She needs a respect that all elders deserve. You must not toss more wood on or use a fork or shovel meanly or sternly. You need to treat her arms and legs and body as you would your own grandparent. You need to carry her, work her positions with the same tenderness as you would your own grandmother. She is wise and generous and deserving of greater respect."
Thank you, Tracy. I'd like to invite you all now to settle in and join in a spirit of prayer, meditation, or simply contemplation. If you'd like, you can close your eyes or soften your gaze. Settle in and find your breath. Feel the breath rising in your center, like the ebb and flow of the tide, the coming and going of the waves. And as you breathe, feel yourself expand with your breath. Feel the boundaries of yourself expand beyond your physical body. See yourself in this place, whether in the sanctuary or online with us, joining together as each of us expands with our breath, with our energy, with our will. We join with those of like mind, of like heart, of like will. And as we breathe together as one community, I share these words. These are from an Anglican service for Candlemas, which is February 2nd, a festival of the church dedicated to holy flame, to the blessing of candles and the sharing of warmth, energy, and blessedness through their light. In that vigil service, they pray, "Eternal light, shine into our hearts. Eternal goodness, deliver us from evil. Eternal power, be our support. Eternal wisdom, scatter the darkness of our ignorance. Eternal pity, have mercy on us. That with all our heart and mind and strength we may seek your face and be brought by your infinite mercy to the presence of the holy." Amen, and blessed be. And as we continue in this meditative, contemplative state, as we continue joined as one community, we take up the joys and concerns shared by our community. In our Book of Life today, Kevin Matthew writes, "On this coming Tuesday, it will be exactly 4 years ago that I was diagnosed with cancer. While I still have it and am still in treatment every week, it is under control for the most part, and it is even shrinking slowly. I cannot adequately express my deep appreciation for this wonderful Emerson community and the support and outpouring of love you have shown me and my family. I am truly grateful beyond words." And Kevin, we are grateful for all you give to this community week in and week out, and we offer our prayers and our support and our energy always. I know I speak for all of us. Thank you. Along with what gladdens and sorrows us, we are open to and send healing, supportive thoughts and energy to those who are troubled, distressed, injured, and beset by strife in the wider world. So much conflict in the Middle East now, threats of a wider war on top of the suffering that is already being felt in Gaza and elsewhere. May those who make decisions about the future of that region be guided by reason, by compassion, and by love above all. In a moment, I'm going to sound our singing bowl. And in the space of time that creates, I invite you to fill it with names, places, occasions that are on your heart, that are filling you with gladness or with concern. Share them into that space that they may be lifted up, carried by this community in our embracing meditation. We are strengthened by the joys that have been shared with us, and out of that strength, let us lift up the concerns and the sorrows, that we may ease the lives and paths of those around us in this community, this our beloved community. As I sound this bowl once again, lift up, shoulder, carry forth, send out healing blessings and thoughts to all around us. Now I'm going to ask Kevin to lead us in a sung meditation. It's number 362 in the gray hymnal, Rise Up, O Flame.
We'll just sing this 3 times. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy.
We've spoken already, both myself and Eric in his poem, of Saint Brigid, or Brigid of Ireland. I want to share a couple of traditional prayers to the saint. First comes from Renmore Parish in Galway in the extreme west of Ireland. Saint Brigid, you were a woman of peace. You brought harmony where there was conflict. You brought light to the darkness. You brought hope to the downcast. May the mantle of your peace cover those who are troubled and anxious. And may peace be firmly rooted in our hearts and in our world. Inspire us to act justly and to reverence all God has made. Brigid, you were a voice for the wounded and the weary. Strengthen what is weak within us. Calm us into a quietness that heals and listens. May we grow each day into greater wholeness in mind, body, and spirit. And a traditional hymn from Ireland. Praise we all Saint Brigid, praiseworthy in all our lands, praiseworthy in all countries. Let us sing her praises. She is in the torch fire, shining through the country. Best of all within our youth, smooth, gentle woman, Winter's house is darkness, winds of cutting sharpness. But upon St. Brigid's day, spring is near returning. Before us is the glow of a single flame. This flame unites all of us. It binds us. It calls us to gather as community and to share in hospitality. Since ancient times, the most humble of fires has served a like purpose, warming the house, nurturing friends and family, representing the living heart of the home. Among the ancient peoples of the Celtic lands, of whom we've spoken already, and among cultures elsewhere, including in ancient Europe and elsewhere around the world, the flame of the hearth was the embodiment of a goddess who both tended the fire and represented all of its many gifts to the community. In Ireland, that goddess was Brigit, or Brigid in the Gaelic tongues. And her name has been invoked down through the centuries, first as a sisterhood of three goddesses, presiding over the blazing spirit of poetic inspiration, incubatory healing and maternity, and the creative fire of the forge. And then, as time passed, she was taken up as one of the three great patron saints of Christian Ireland, alongside Patrick and Columba. Now, as I've already mentioned in passing, in the liturgical traditions of many Christian denominations, February 2nd marks the feast known as Candlemas. This festival, for many adherents, marks a time at which candles are blessed at the church to be taken into the home where, if burned in a window, they provide blessings and protection for the home. In Gaelic-speaking countries of the British Isles, such as Ireland and Scotland, this date was one of the great pre-Christian pagan fire festivals known as Imbolc. That name seems to refer to the coming into milk of the ewes at this time of year. Imbolc was the hinge point between winter and spring. With most Celtic traditional observances, the new period being ushered in, whether a day, a season, or a year, was seen to begin in the dark, rather than just with the coming of the light. So this feast, Imbolc then, celebrating the first stirrings, the earliest stirrings of the spring in the depths of winter, begins in the last night of that winter. It can be no coincidence that in the Christian world, Candlemas is known as the feast day of Brigid, often. Lahéla Brigid in the Irish language, bearing the name of the saint who bore the same name as the pagan goddess of the blazing hearth. The folklorist Michael Dames notes a traditional belief that on the day of Brigid's birth, a column of flame was seen to rise from the infant saint's home. Investigating the flame, observers found that the flame actually rose from the head of the baby, but the fire didn't consume her. I think it's no coincidence that one of the very earliest pieces of poetry preserved in Irish tradition, the raising of the magical force of poetic incantation by the legendary bard known as Aurigin, speaks of the fire in the head, understood by many to refer to that very inspiration that Shakespeare talks about as a muse of fire. Time and again in folk custom, Brigid, goddess and saint, is seen to embody the sacred, magical, creative character of fire. to return to Candlemas and the carrying forth of candles from the place where the community is gathered in sacred ritual out and into the home to bestow blessings. Every year in ancient Ireland, at the great Druidic festival of Samhain, which we commemorate as Halloween, the beginning of winter and of the ritual year, the sacred fire of the hill of Tara, the seat of the kings and the traditional center of Ireland, was lit. And, so the stories tell us, shared forth from the center of the land throughout the land to even the most humble dwellings. At the next of these 4 great fire festivals, Imbolc, the one we're speaking of, one of the most enduring customs was to bring in an effigy representing the infant Brigid through the door of the home, asking the inhabitants to welcome her in and bring her sacred presence into the home. Many cultures shared this idea of one central national hearth at the center of the land, at the center of the culture. For the Romans, for example, the Temple of Vesta was seen to be the hearth of the entire empire. The well-known Vestal Virgins, again, female figures, tended this fire. In Ireland, the sisters of Brigid's order, the Brigidine sisters, were the custodians of the saint's fire and tended it in perpetuity. Brigid was said to be one of the 20 women who tended the fire in a cycle. So one day was set aside where the fire was left to be tended by the saint herself. And so naturally, Brigid was invoked in the homes as the ebb and flare of the hearth was tended to each and every day. When the flame was kindled anew in the hearth, a share of the blessings of the gods and goddesses was bestowed on each dwelling. As this precious gift was tended day in and day out, fed day in and day out, it was Brigid who was a sacred presence and a practical partner in these daily rites of fire tending. She was a triple figure of inspiration, craftsmanship, and health. And as such, Brigid was the living fire in the hearth, who animated the home with gifts worthy of respect and gratitude. As I said at the very beginning of the service, many of the ancient incantations that were spoken during this ritual hearth tending were collected by the Scottish folklorist Alexander Carmichael around the turn of the 20th century. It's uncertain how much of the material Carmichael passed on represents adaptations of old pre-Christian material and what might just simply be recasting of Christian prayer via Celtic sensibilities and literary customs of the time and the place. But yet, these incantations survive, and they can provide meaning to us. Structure, prayer. As the fire is raised for the day, the ancient figure of Brigid among the Gaels is invoked along with the Holy Mother of the Church, and widening circles of protection are invoked out from the sacred flame. The encompassment of Brigid and Mary, guarding the hearth, guarding the floor, guarding the household all. Or maybe remembering the earlier triple goddess of whom I spoke, the 3 sisters, all known as Brigid, to the sacred 3, to save, to shield, to surround the hearth, the house, the household, this eve, this night, and every night. We hear in these prayers an outward casting of blessings and protections, as if the simple Candlemas flame burning in the window sent forth rings of protection, guarding first the sacred flame itself, then the family within the house, and then ultimately all those connected to them. We can imagine this winter night's flame embodying the manifold gifts of this lady, Brigid, shining forth like a beacon of the sacred, lighting the winter darkness and heralding to all the promise of the spring. Outside the home, Brigid was understood to be present in many places in the land. In her home parish, Kildare, There was to be found not only her perpetual flame, but as Eric mentioned earlier, also a sacred well, still venerated to this day, and a tree to which cluties, or votive prayer cloths, will still be found tied today. The well extending below, the tree reaching up to the heights, extend this goddess saint's reach into all the traditional realms of earth, sea, and sky. For the ancient Celts, the people were seen as living in a very real bond of union with all of the land. As late as the Middle Ages, we find report of a royal inauguration ritual, which symbolically united the new king with a horse, who was a representative of the sovereignty of the land. The king was expected to be a fit and honest representative of the people in consecrating this union. In Irish tradition, when the king of the gods suffered a disfiguring injury, he was expected to step down from the throne. The custom echoes in the wasteland in the tales of King Arthur. When a wound to the king brings about the wasteland, the land suffers as the king suffers. We know well from our own times that people do not always comport themselves well with respect to the natural world, and sadly, often so do their leaders. We find an example of this tension between the sacred land and secular governance in the tale I told about St. Brigid's cloak. The land that tradition says was claimed by the magical spreading of Brigid's mantle is the Covert, and it is the center of Irish horse breeding and supports grazing of stocks by all kinds. So apart from what I just mentioned, the symbolic union of the king to the horse, it's appropriate, too, that this be a land of stock raising, because Brigid is often known as Brigid of the kine, or cattle, and she's often depicted in images as accompanied by a cow. Sadly, the legendary exchange of tension between the state and the sacred was to play out again years later, when the English crown and its arm, the Church of England, extinguished the perpetual flame of Brigid after all those centuries of being tended by the sisters. It's only been in very recent years that the flame was relit. It is once again tended by the Sisters of the Brigidine Order. Each year now in Kildare, Brigid's city, on Imbolc, the sisters share the flame with all who seek it. I took some of that flame myself, and it has been passed through candle to candle to candle to our chalice flame today. Anyone who seeks that fire is welcome to it, no matter their religion or their lack thereof. And this is the highest testament to the universal nature of Brigid, beloved of pagan, Christian, and the secular alike, for all the gifts that she bestows, summed up, carried, represented by the flame in all its purity, light, and energy. The waves of light emanating out from Brigid's flame do not merely extend across the land, they extend in time. It's critical that we bear in mind that Brigid's sacred fire at Kildare was perpetual, and that the saint herself would participate magically in ensuring that it would be so. The blessings of the fire, the warmth and light and unity it bestows exist in an eternal now, reminding us that we have as much need of these gifts now in our time as those who wondered at it and nurtured it day after day all those generations ago. The flame of Brigid, living not only in the hearth but in the forge, the nursery, and the fiery imaginations of the poet, exists in simple, blazing being, bearing no judgment, offering succor to those who stand before it with open hearts and honest minds. And so at Candlemas, Imbolc, we here and gathered online find ourselves before the simple flame in our chalice. All of us united for this moment as we gaze upon it. May we carry its light forth from this place as winter yields its stony grip on the land to the flowering gifts of the spring. And may you, by its light, be very blessed be. I invite you now to rise as you're willing and able, embody your spirit, and join in our closing hymn, This Little Light of Mine.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Please remain risen. I have a little parting gift for all of you as I'm going to offer some thanks and acknowledgments. I've said that the flames, all the flames here today were lit from candles lit from Brigid's flame in Kildare. And in the spirit of Candlemas, I've brought some candles for all of you lit from that same source candle, directly from the candle that came from Kildare. So I'm going to ask Tracy to take those around while I offer some thanks and acknowledgments. Please take these candles, and I would invite you maybe to light them in the darkness, in the spirit of Candlemas, that you contemplate the light they bring in the winter weather that we are now entering into. I want to take this moment to thank, first of all, Kevin, our music director, Tracy, worship associate today. I think we have Adam and Conrad, yes, in the Crow's Nest, providing tech support and making this all available on Zoom. Margaret for setting up hospitality for our first Sunday of the month potluck afterwards. Louise has been helping out in the absence of Lynn and Linda at the welcome desk, and everyone else who helps this service happen. You may need to set your candle aside for a moment. I'm going to invite you, as you're willing and able, to reach out, to connect to those around you. You can take a hand, touch an elbow, whatever feels comfortable to you, but make a connection. And remember that we are joined by other members of our beloved community on the internet, on Zoom, and so send your thoughts, your attention, your energy out to them as I leave you with this benediction and extinguish this blessed candle flame in our chalice. These are words of Deborah Weiner. O Spirit of life and love, we pause for a moment on this winter day to reflect on the changes 1 week can make in our lives. We celebrate the Feast of Imbolc, the pagan holiday that heralds the coming of spring. Our hearts stir with the thought that lambs are being born, that the light is increasing, that, if not here, then in other parts of the country, the earth has begun to stir from its winter sleep. We bow to the forces of nature that have stirred again and again and reminded us through storms and sudden changes in our weather that we are not in charge. That earth is moved by jet streams, polar vortices, and atmospheric rivers, and we must endure and be patient. And through it all, we are reminded again and again that we are not alone. May we continue to recognize that in this spiritual home, we are held. In this house of memory and hope, we will be welcomed and supported. In this temple of celebration and contemplation, we may bring all of who we are and be both honored and affirmed. For all this and all that will come in the days ahead, we say amen and very blessed be. Thank you all.
We sing a song to Brigid. Brigid brings the spring, awakens all the fields and the flowers, and calls the birds to sing. All were welcome at her door, no one was turned away. She loved the poor, the sick, and the scorned, and helped them on their way. We sing a song to Brigid. Brigid brings the spring, awakens all the fields and the flowers, and calls the birds to sing. She laid her cloak out on the ground and wedged it row to row. The wells and springs of the green, and from St. Brigid's blessings flow. We sing a song to Brigid. Brigid brings the spring, awakens all the spring, the flowers, and calls the birds to sing.